Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Dan and I'm here to bring you another FPL video. In this one, we're going to be looking at my team selection ahead of Game Week 31. We'll be breaking down how I got on in Game Week 30 and discuss all things transfer related for Game Week 31. We'll be looking at a captaincy data breakdown backed by popular demand, essentially a table I put in the Game Week 30 team selection video, and the community have spoken. You wanted to see it again, so it's back in this one. We'll be looking at how the mini league has shaped up and changed. We'll also be looking at fixtures to watch out for and potentially delaying your transfers this week. So let's have a look first of all at how I got on in Game Week 30. So as you can see here, the captaincy and the essentially the move for Grealish did work out, scoring 24 points with my captaincy on Erling Haaland, and the move for Jack Grealish really paying off with a huge differential points of 12. Essentially, the two moves I made was Bruno Fernandes down to Grealish and then Ivan Toney up to Erling Haaland. We got a little bit fortunate where Ivan Toney actually missed a penalty, which helped a little bit in terms of the minus points, I suppose, even though he wouldn't have been a captaincy shout. We also had a blank by Bruno Fernandes in that Everton fixture, only Rashford returning that assist for the most popular United picks. So all out, I think it was very, very positive for me. As you can see, the front three were the heroes here. I think there's been a very, very popular template front three recently of Haaland, Watkins and Harry Kane. I don't own Mo Salah personally, but he was another individual that some people own ahead of Harry Kane. And of course, he went and missed a penalty once again. So two penalty misses from two players that definitely were maybe not necessarily differentials, but they were very, very commonly owned across a lot of managers. So I think that did help the Green Arrow overall. I got moved from 74k to 64k, as you can see below. So a 10k Green Arrow for me, which is very, very positive at this stage. And when you're this highly ranked, essentially 10k is quite a large chunk. And especially after taking that hit as well, is really, really great that worked out for me. So as you can see, defensively, very, very poor effort overall. Two transfers worked out really well for me. Maddison, very disappointing show for him once again. He's certainly going to be on the chopping block for me. And of course, Bukayo Saka, unfortunately not the Arsenal asset this week to have returned. But it definitely seems to be flip-flopping between a lot of them, right? Between Odegaard, Martinelli and Saka, they're definitely sharing a lot of those points. It just depends if you've got all three, then absolutely you're always going to be banking that you're going to be scoring points. But if you're like most of us, you probably own one or maximum two now, right? So if you own Odegaard and Martinelli or Saka and Martinelli, it just seems to have been a consistent run of points for a long time. Saka just, unfortunately, over the past few weeks, has only scored 1 point on each. Unfortunately, a little bit of a problem on the bench for me. I did make the March to Maddison move. Essentially, I had March in the starting lineup. I really felt like Brighton were going to do something against Spurs. Of course, on the back end of that game, they did end up losing. But of course, March getting an assist, scoring 7 points there overall. He was actually in my starting lineup until about, I think, 20 minutes to the deadline, 25 minutes to the deadline. I made a bit of a swap. A bit of a schoolboy error there, but it is what it is. I also had Rico Henry ahead of Botman. I genuinely felt that Newcastle were going to shut out or had a better chance of a clean sheet than most other players I had in, of course, Estepinian and Henry. It turned out, though, that, of course, Rico Henry got the assist for the penalty that Ivan Toney converted. So a little bit unfortunate that I didn't get the maximum amount of points that I could have based on my original team selection. But I made those moves or those swaps based on fixtures. It just never worked out on this week. But still a Green Arrow nonetheless. Very positive stuff. Let me know in the comments below how you got on, of course. I would love to hear how you did. Now, first of all, then we'll move on to the fixture watch. For this week, for those that don't know, that we are playing European fixtures on European soil. Essentially, the Champions League have got two dates of Tuesday this evening and Wednesday tomorrow evening, where we see Manchester City play Bayern Munich and Real Madrid play Chelsea. Now, I would say most managers have at least one asset from both of these squads from an FPL perspective. Something to just consider when you're making your moves and you're trying to maybe adjust your team. Just think that there could potentially be some problems that arise from these fixtures. We hope not, of course, as managers for FPL. We don't want those headaches, but the likes of Grealish, that, for example, is going to be a very popular move this week. Maybe it is worth just holding fire until at least this game closes out to make sure he doesn't pick up an injury. If you've already made the move already, then so be it. If you're worried about being priced out of it or your money is tight, I absolutely don't condemn early moves. It's just if you've got a little bit more flexibility in your budget, maybe maybe wait until Thursday's conclusion of matches in Manchester United versus Sevilla and Ghent versus West Ham before you make your final moves. Of course, with West Ham, they're probably the least effective or affected team, I suppose, for most FPL managers. Maybe some of you did have Kurt Zuma. Maybe some of you had got a differential with Bowen in the midfield, maybe Ben Rama, for example. A few individuals to keep an eye on just in case they pick anything up. But of course, yeah, Manchester United, City and Chelsea, I think a lot of us have multiple assets from these respective clubs. So something to consider when you're planning your moves this week. Then we'll have a look at my personal transfer plan. So I've only realistically got a Route 1 this week. I do feel like rolling the transfer doesn't make sense this week for me personally, because I'm looking at free hitting in 32, which means when you get to game week 33, you don't get 2 free transfers. It doesn't roll across 2 game weeks. You effectively burn that transfer because you've used your free hit chip in 32. So don't want to get too complex with that. If you're new to the game or you're kind of fresh to chip usage, that's kind of the crux of what happens, right? You're not really able to roll the week before you use a chip and expect the next week to have 2 free transfers. So I feel like it makes most sense to attack now. And the only 2 individuals that I can realistically see being long-term holds or positive moves for me are these 2 guys, right? Matoma's been hurting my rank significantly, I think, over the past few weeks. He's just been so consistent for this Brighton team that I think now is the right time to buy him. I've never really found a week that's right for it other than taking hits, and it's just never fell that way. I chose March at the beginning to go for over Matoma. Didn't quite work out in terms of the total points tally, although it was very, very close. I feel like a double up on them does make a lot of sense. Of course, with me free hitting in 32, that then gives me a very good run of fixtures for Brighton from game week 33 to game week 38, including the fact that they are the only team in the Premier League that have 10 remaining fixtures across these remaining game weeks. So we have double game week 34 that's already been announced, and then we also have potential 2 other likely double game weeks towards the end of the season. And I feel like this is a long-term move, freeing up a little bit of money just in case I want to move for, say, a Mohamed Salah in 34, for example, or Trent from a defensive point of view, something along those lines. And that's why I'm thinking Matoma makes the most sense. However, that being said, the game week 31 fixture specifically is what's a little bit worrying for me. I'm not sure Brighton will do that much damage to Chelsea. I think they may win. I don't think Chelsea are on the up at the moment at all. I think with them playing midweek as well against a tough Real Madrid side, it's going to be a big ask for Frank Lampard to also be able to turn over the Seagulls. But Martinelli playing against the West Ham side that they do like a London derby, but it's a very, very difficult fixture for West Ham. So I feel like he could take advantage of them, absolutely. So a little bit of a tricky one, but let me know again in the comments below who you would prefer out of these 2 options for my team, and if you are considering either of these yourselves. Then we'll have a look at the captaincy data. So as mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is backed by popular demand. I put it in my Game Week 30 team selection video, asked the community, or you guys in general, would you like to see it featured again? And the answer was pretty much a resounding yes. So here it is. The only change I've made is essentially the points in the last 5 as suggested by one of the community in Jack. So thanks for that suggestion, buddy. I've removed the comments section from it essentially and just decided to focus purely on the FPL side of things. So as you can see here, these are the kind of individuals I've gone for that I feel may be warranted for an armband. I won't go into each and every single individual here. It would just take too long to discuss. But in essence, take a snapshot of this table. The 3rd column along for the chances conceded is by the opponent that they're playing in game week 31. So for example, Erling Haaland is featuring against Leicester, and in the last 4 games, Leicester have conceded 14 chances in the central position. So all of this data is taken from Fantasy Football Scout. It definitely helps essentially any FPL manager really become better at the game and using data and analytics to support your decision making. And this is how I got the data. Of course, then the points last 5 just gives you a kind of understanding of their form, how many points they're scoring, have they got double-digit hauls in their locker, just as an example, essentially. So things to consider here for many, but me personally, across all of these picks, there's 3 kind of standout options for me. The top two strikers there, number 9s for their respective clubs in Haaland and Kane. We know how consistent Kane has been, and he's got a favourable fixture against Bournemouth at home. Yes, Bournemouth have been a little bit on the up recently. They've got a few positive results, pushing them out of the relegation battle. But honestly, I just feel like Kane is going to do some damage here. So absolutely, after consistently scoring so many points over the past 5 game weeks, totaling to that 37, I only feel like that score is going to grow once again on this fixture. So absolutely worth the captaincy shout. As you can see, Erling Haaland, the no-brainer, I think, in terms of captaincy this week for many. And he did score a total of 32 points across the last 5. But one of those was a game he completely missed due to injury. So he scored 0 points on it. Of course, based on his consistency, you probably could add another goal onto that, maybe 5-6 points potentially onto that tally, which means he would match, if not slightly exceed, Harry Kane's points. And then finally, just in terms of a differential option, I've actually gone with Isak because I think when you look at his numbers, he scored 33 points over the past 5 game weeks, which again is actually competition for the likes of Harry Kane and Erling Haaland. And he's actually 6.7 million. So only that value, that's a phenomenal amount of points per million that you're spending in your team. So if you're not looking at, say, for example, Ivan Toney as high up to Erling Haaland or Harry Kane, and you're in the market for a cheaper striker, then I certainly think that Isak is one to look at. And it's worth bearing in mind as well, Newcastle will have an extra double game week to be announced later on in the season as well, due to the obviously the participation in the EFL against the EFL Cup against Man United. They did have a postponed fixture that needs to be rearranged still. So that's worth bearing in mind, that you will get a double game week later on in the season as well if you moved for him, let alone captained him. So they're my 3 standout picks. But once again, guys, in the comments, use that section to let me know exactly what you're planning and what your thoughts are. Hopefully that section helped you. Let's move on then to the defensive lineup for me for game week 31. As you can see here, we have got a double up of Brentford defence, which I'm not 100% positive or locked in with by any stretch of the imagination. But at the moment, I'm just looking at the fixture and I'm thinking this makes more sense. I have got the Chelsea boys in Kepa and Chilwell currently sat on my bench, but they're playing a Brighton side that are really pushing for those Champions League places or just European fixtures in general. So I really do feel like we're going to see a Brighton turnover of this Chelsea squad. The heavy rotation, a little bit of inconsistency, of course, with managers, with ownership changes, a lot of January transfer movement for the club. It doesn't seem like they've had a long period of settledness, I suppose you could say. And I feel like Brighton might get a result here, which is why I've set up the way I have. But again, let me know your comments below or your thoughts below in the comments, because it's maybe a little bit of a tricky benching headache this week. But I've gone with the fixture favourability here and gone with the double up of Brentford against Wolves. We've then got Kieran Trippier facing against Aston Villa. A little bit tricky there because I have got Ollie Watkins in the side also facing, which is never a plus really when you've got an attacker from the same team that one of your defenders is playing against. But it is what it is. Both of these guys are in phenomenal form from an attacking point of view. So hopefully we get attacking returns from both of these parties. And then, like I say, talking of Brighton, Estepinian is a bit of a kind of almost wild card here, where I think some people may be benching him, looking at that Chelsea fixture and seeing just a difficult fixture on paper. But I feel like they've got the potential to shut them out. And of course, Estepinian is a very attacking fullback in general. And I feel like he could exploit that left-hand side of Chelsea if he's given enough freedom. So let's see how this pans out. But that's how I'm lined up defensively at the moment. In the midfield then, if we were taking into consideration that we were going to be moving James Maddison on for somebody, I think it would be Mitoma. As I said, I would get more fixtures over between now and game week 38 essentially in that one move. And I feel like this is the time to do it. It's kind of a luxury transfer in some ways, but you know, I've got the free hit coming in 32, so that I don't want to burn the transfer. The other option is I just sell him for Mitoma and just use him as a long-term asset. And if Rashford is past fit, I easily swap in Rashford for one of Mitoma or March, depending on how I feel. But I think Saka and Grealish, between them in terms of their fixtures and what they can do in terms of explosivity of recent game weeks, I think neither of them can realistically hit the bench. So that's how the midfield would line up if I did make the Maddison move. And then finally, we've got the triple strikers here of Haaland, Kane and Watkins. Haaland and Kane, as mentioned, really, really positive fixtures for them from an attacking point of view, both at home as well. I really do feel like the trend is going to continue for these guys. We then have Ollie Watkins, last but not least there. Playing Newcastle at home, it's a very, very tricky fixture, even on her home turf. We know Newcastle's defensive numbers have been very, very positive. So for him to break through is going to be tricky, but I think that he could do it. Like I say, I'm hoping realistically here for attacking returns from both Trippier and Watkins to balance out everything. And then, of course, we'll be talking captaincy here, vice captaincy and bench. And as you can see, captaincy firmly on the Norwegian at the moment. Don't really feel like there's any need to move it off him unless, of course, we get anything out of the Champions League fixture this evening. Vice captaincy is on Harry Kane as well, as I think he's probably got the biggest upside for me out of all vice captaincy possible options. And then you can see on the bench, the two Chelsea boys, as mentioned, in Kepa and Chilwell. I really do struggle to feel like they can come ahead of any of these picks at the moment for me. Brentford defensively have definitely looked a little bit shaky, a little bit weak, so maybe Kepa comes in from a goalkeeping perspective to rack up those save points. The ceiling across both of those players is probably a little bit even, right? But if I'm going with two Brighton attackers, I'm also, again, kind of contradicting that if I back Brighton to score goals, then why am I playing the Chelsea goalkeeper? It doesn't really make sense to me. And the same for Ben Chilwell, really. Not only is it a case that he's playing a very formidable Brighton side at the moment, or potent, should I say, in goal-scoring capabilities, but also because of that Real Madrid fixture tomorrow night, I feel like there's going to be heavy rotation by Lampard, and he's going to be using the best 11 on the Champions League fixtures. I can't see him looking at this Brighton game and saying, I need to play my best 11 here. He knows top four is not achievable. He needs to stop the free fall essentially across in the Premier League. But in order to fulfill the ambitions of Chelsea as a football club, surely he needs to focus on the Champions League. So I'm anticipating that we might see a Chilwell benching again like we did last week, which will be disappointing as an owner of him. But it does mean that I've got bench cover that comes in that I think is formidable enough. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on that point. And then, of course, I've got Botman against Villa. Don't really fancy the double up in Newcastle, as I said, because I've got Watkins in the team. And finally, Marcus Rashford, as he's 50% flagged at time of recording. Against Forest away, I honestly feel like he would definitely come in. Maybe I benched Watkins, but I think the likelihood is I'd probably bench March or Matoma if I was to make that Matoma move and put Rashford in the starting lineup instead. But this is pretty much how I'm set up. So all good, really. I'm very, very positive about the team. I think I'm set up very well longer term. I've got the free hit 32 planned. Don't feel like there's any other option for me realistically, as I've got so many blanking players now with the moves I've made recently. So I think I'm pretty locked into that. And yeah, we'll see how the rest of the season goes. Last but not least, before we close the video off, guys, I will just take a quick look at the FPL Link Mini League. So without kind of moving too far ahead, this is a completely free mini league to join. There is a link in the description directly. And of course, the mini league code itself as well. If you like to copy and paste and put that into the FPL website manually or the FPL app, you can also do that. But as you can see here, we've had some movement across the top 10 realistically here. We've got George McGavin now taking that top spot, with FPL Boo Boo dropping all the way down to 10th now after back-to-back very difficult game weeks for him. Of course, it is worth noting for Boo Boo, though, that he does have 3 chips in his locker. He's still got a second wild card, a free hit, and the bench boost as well. So I definitely feel like that will shift. But he's 60-odd points off the mark now, and he was leading the mini-league for quite some time. So congratulations to George for taking the top spot for now. We also have Jan Aigner there as well. You've been in and amongst, I think, the top 5 or so of FPL teams here for quite some time. So to have pipped second and only 7 points now behind George, very, very formidable stuff from you. But like I say, it's completely free to join. You don't need to be a subscriber to join, and there will be a football-related prize at the end of the season. So feel free, like I say, to join that in the link below in the video description, or use that code directly. But that's going to wrap the video up, guys. Now, I hope you enjoyed the content. There wasn't really anything kind of, I don't think, shocking in this video, to be honest. There's no real kind of heavy differentials that I think I'm going for. Grealish was kind of that punt last week that really did work out in my favour. But let me know how you got on in Game Week 30, what your Game Week 31 plans are. I always try to respond to every comment on the videos I upload, so feel free to do that. Of course, I'll be doing a live stream in Game Week 31 as well, so feel free to tune in to that as well. And finally, last but not least, guys, if you really enjoyed the content, you got something out of it, it added any value to you whatsoever, then please consider hitting that subscribe button for me. It's completely free. And of course, hitting that thumbs up as well to support the video and the channel. Thanks very much for tuning in, guys. I will hopefully see you in another video soon. Take care.